Hello guys, my name is Nico, I'm from Germany and today I'm going to guide you through the installation of NetLock RMM with Docker. So let's jump straight to the requirements. If you're taking a look on the software requirements, we need to have a Linux installation. In our case it will be Ubuntu, a MySQL server and minimum version 8.0, a domain for SSL encryption. In our case you're going to use the Let's Encrypt integration of NetLock, an SSH client. In our case it will be PuTTY, but you can use whatever you want. And the hardware requirements, the minimum requirements are 2 cores and 2 GB of RAM, and an SSD is recommended. Just forward, if you need any help, join our Discord or get in touch with us through our members portal. We offer open source help and paid help depending on your requirements. So let's jump straight through our documentation. In our case, I'm going to guide you through the documentation so you get to know better. I'm not going to explain you the server concepts in this video. If you are looking for an explanation, you can go on roles and server concepts. There you will find a video explaining the server concepts and the security models you can realize. We are going with the basic concept for this video. Just some information about the tags. You can use different kind of tags. In this case, we can only see 2 of them because there's just the version 2.0.0 and the latest version tag. For this tutorial, we are going to use the latest version tag, but it is recommended that you're going to use a version tag. And this is because if you're going to use the latest tag and we're going to release a new version of NetLock, since the latest tag will always have the latest version of NetLock, it could happen that you accidentally upgrade your installation and you might don't want to do that because this will include upgrading your agents packages on the devices too. So make sure that you're going with a version tag in the best scenario. Let's start with the installation of the NetLock RMM web console. First of all, we need to create the required directories. In this case, it will be home, NetLock, and then web console. Just copy the command, paste it in, create a folder. Then we need to create a persistent web console accounts directory. This one is required for the Let's Encrypt integration. Just create it. And now we need to create the app settings JSON file. In our case, you're going to use Nano. If you have a different text editor, use it. Now, after creating it, we need to fill in the template app settings JSON, copy the template app settings JSON, paste it in, and that's it. Now we need to configure the settings. So now we need to configure the app settings JSON to our environment. In our case, since we're going to use an SSL encrypted connection, we want to disable HTTP, and the standard config is already disabled. Then you need to look that HTTPS is enabled. Then the port is 443, it's the standard port and you should leave it like that. And you want to force the connection, it should be true, and HDSD should be true too. And on certificate, we are not going to provide a certificate here because you're going to use the Let's Encrypt integration, and it is also common for you because it's the most easy setup and secure. Then if you're going to look on the remote server, we are going to provide the remote server address. In this case, it will be demo, then private netlockRMM.com. This should be the same as your domain and the same for the file server. Depending on your configuration, in this tutorial we are going to install all the server roles on one device. That's why we will keep it with this domain and pointing everything to the IP address in the background. The standard part is 0443. You should use SSL, and the same for the file server. And you should not change that if you don't know what you're doing there. Then we need to provide a MySQL server. In our case, I've already prepared one. We're going to use our MySQL server on the same machine. And just let me fill that in. You need to fill your information. Then our database name. Then the username, and then we need the root password. Or that can of course be a password from another user depending on what kind of user you decide to use. Then an important thing, if you're going to reboot the machine, you need to select an additional parameter, otherwise the NetLock installation will not be able to connect with the machine after you rebooted it. So make sure that you set a low public key retrieval to true. On Let's Encrypt, or better say Reduce Encrypt, that's the integration name, you need to enable it, set it to true. Then you need to accept the terms of service. Then you need to provide the domain you're going to use. In our case, it's demo, then private netlockrmm.com. Then you need to provide the mail address as contact. I'm going to use my private one here. And then you need to allow the specific challenge types. That really depends on your environment. I just suggest to leave it on the default settings. And that's it, basically, for the app settings. Then you need just to save it, and we are going to leave this. The next step is to fire up the web console container. So we scroll down to our one container comments. In our case, we're going to use the example comment because we already provided the necessary directories and app settings, JSON in this comment. Just copy it, going back to our SSH client, copy it in, and then just fire it up. If you haven't already run the container in the past, it will firstly pull the images, but then just start it up. Then we are going to check the container status using docker ps. And as you can see, it's up and running. Now we want to check the log files if everything is running. So we're going to type docker logs and then copy in the container ID. And now we see that the MySQL connection is perfectly fine. The database tables have been created. And there is no error message regarding our Let's Encrypt certificate, so it's probably finished. Now we are going to open the NetLock console in our web browser, just like this in our case. And as we can see, we got our NetLock installation up and running. So we can just verify it by logging in. The default credentials is admin as username and admin as password. Then we need to set a new password. In our case, we will just leave it as the default ones. And then click on confirm. Then we again need to log in again. And there we go. That's our dashboard. Now the last thing to finish the installation process of the web console is to provide the package provider URL. This URL is required to allow the backends that we will install later on to acquire the NetLock packages for the agents and the installers so that you can actually and will be able to install the agent on devices. Otherwise it will not work. So what we need to do is go to settings, then on system. On the system, we can also see the status of the web console and the backend. In our case, we can now see that the file server and remote server role is not connected. This is because we didn't set it up yet. We will do it in a later place. And on the package provider URL, we need to provide this URL. In order to receive the packages, you need to either package them yourself and compile the binaries yourself, or what you can also do is just signing up on our members portal, which is completely free and your data is also being kept private. And then you can just opt in for an open source membership. I'm just going to show you how you can acquire this quickly. Just log in to our members portal, just register on it, then go to memberships, then under open source, you can just click on setup now, then you need to press yes, and then under my products, you will be able to see your open source membership, and then you need to just reissue your package, which we have already done here. Then we need to copy the link and paste it into our web console, and then just save it. That's it. If you want, you can of course host this package on another web server, so it's just an easy way to do it with our members portal as long as your environment has the capability of connecting to our members portal. Now we can install the NetLock RMM server backend. First of all, we need to create the required directories again. So copy the comment, create the NetLock server directory. Then we need to create the accounts directory required for the Let's Encrypt integration. Now we need to create a persistent files directory. The directory is required because NetLock comes with a file server where the agent packages are being hosted from the backend. And you can also store your own favorite tools and share files with your customers through it. So to not lose them every time we start the container, we need to create a persistent directory. After we've done that, we need to create the app settings JSON and copy in the template from the documentation. Now we need to change the app settings entries through our environment. First of all, make sure that HTTPS is enabled. The port is 7443. Make sure it's wireless in your firewall too. For also connection, HDSDS is enabled too. A certificate is not being provided because you're going to use the Let's Encrypt configuration again. Then we are coming to roles. I'm not going to explain everything in the detail now because if you look for information, you can take a look on the documentation roles and server concepts. Just short summary, it means that you can actually split the NetLock backend into different kind of roles to have a better performance or security, depending on your environment. Going to MySQL, we need to fill in our configuration again. In my case, I've got my MySQL server ready, as usual. Just copying the details in now, getting the database name. In my case, the user remains root. Then we need to provide the password. And do not forget again to allow public key retrieval by setting this to true. After this, we need to make sure that Let's Encrypt is getting configured again. So in my case, I'm having the domain demo, then private netlockRMM.com, and again my mail address. Make sure that you enable it and accept the terms of service, and save the configuration and leave it. After we prepare the app settings JSON file, we can fire up the container. Scroll down on the configuration, then go to the run container comments. I'm going to use the example comment again because it's perfectly fine for the tutorial. Copy it in, run it. Now we need to verify that the container is running. Use docker ps for that, and as we can see, the container is running. We want to make sure that the container is running without any errors. That's why we're going to use docker logs and then the container ID. As you can see, there's an error message regarding Let's Encrypt integration. This happens because we now try to again issue a certificate for our domain, but it's already existing and in use. So we need to make sure that we use the certificate that has already been issued for the web console account. This is very simple. Navigate into Home, NetLock, Server, Accounts, and then title as. We can see there's a new directory created. Go into ACMA, then directory, and again ls, and you can see there's a JSON file. Simply delete the JSON file. Now we need to copy the JSON file from our web console into it. The JSON file, it contains the Let's Encrypt account information, so that you already have issued in certificate. We need to type cp for copy, then go home, NetLock, web console, then accounts, ACMA, directory, and select the JSON. Then we need to select the destination path, so it's home, NetLock, server, accounts, accounts, then ACMA, then directory. And now we can check again and we see the app settings JSON. What we now need to do is we need to restart the container. To do that, we need to type docker ps so we can get our container ID again. Then we need to type docker stop container ID, then docker start container ID. Now we need to check it again the logs so that everything is working fine now. And as you can see, there's no error message anymore. So that's it. The server should be set up now. We can verify that by going into System on the dashboard. Then refresh the page. Scroll down, and as you can see, the new server backend just arrived. It is named as the container ID. What we also can see is that the NetLock RMM file server and remote server has been connected. If you see that this is not connected, you probably did something wrong in your configuration. Make sure everything is working fine. You can also check the app settings again from the server and by just clicking on the app settings JSON in the dashboard. However, the installation is now done. If you need any help, needing help with troubleshooting, having technical issues, simply join our Discord server so you can do troubleshooting with our community. Otherwise, you can also get in touch with us through our members portal and ticketing system so we can assist you by setting up your installation if required.